Hi everybody, it's Lorina. I'm doing another video today. So this video is on why I left the Mormon Church. And yes, I did change the name of my YouTube channel from just my name, Lorina Quigley, to the Mystical Ex-Mormon podcast. And the reason why I did that is because, first of all, I'm not a Mormon. I was raised Mormon, pretty hardcore Mormon. And a lot of people who leave the Mormon Church, there's an element of mysticism that really gets trashed. But I've had a lot of mystical experiences in my life. And Mormonism is based on mysticism. There is a lot of mysticism in the religion. So where do we put that? When you come from that type of religion out into the world and looking at, wow, well, that's probably not true. And I'm talking about the Mormon Church, and it has a lot of cult like qualities. Some people do call it a cult. I have referred to it as a cult. You can call it what you want. And I do call it the Mormon Church. It was called the Mormon Church when I was younger. I still refer to it as the Mormon Church. A lot of people, they now say, oh, no, you have to call it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That is a mouthful. And it was always called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but LDS for short. I call it Mormonism, Mormon Church. I was raised a Mormon. That works for me, just saying it. Some people think of that as disrespectful now. I'm sorry if you feel that's disrespectful. It's, to me, it's what it was to me, and it still is what it is. That's all. Anyway, and now in my life, just to kind of catch up, I am a medium, I'm a psychic, I do all sorts of mystical explorations. That is kind of who I am, it's what I do, it's what I love to do. I teach psychic development and mediumship. I also do a lot of energy healing work, which is, that's part of the Mormon Church too. Although I've had people, Mormons, mostly Mormon men, get mad at me for saying that that holding the priesthood is and is I say it's energy healing. I've been kind of yelled at through YouTube, on comments that it is not. And yes, I understand it's much more than that, but that is an element of holding the priesthood. Is you use your hands on people's heads for many reasons, being like exorcism is one of them. Having energy of particular powers coming through your hands, anointing people to bring those powers through to take you to higher levels of the priesthood. Of course, women don't hold the priesthood because they can't. And anyway, so that's hands-on healing to me. And there are many elements to hands-on healing or energy healing, which is what I also do. Anyway, that power comes from somewhere. Just saying. Anyway, so why did I leave the Mormon Church? Well, let me just get started with my parents were Mormon, very Mormon. My mom comes from a long line of Mormons from Ogden, Utah. My dad was a convert to the church. He's from Idaho. He also lived in Oregon, Washington, up there. Pretty rough crowd. He became a convert when he was about 19 years old, 20. I can't remember exactly. He was in Korea. Someone handed him the Book of Mormon, the Mormon Bible, some people call it. He followed, there's some teaching in that book where you read from this scripture and you pray to be shown the truth. And it helped him quit smoking, so he became a convert, changed his life. He was pretty wild teenager, from what I hear, although we didn't hear much about it because he tried to kind of leave that all behind. My mom, super Mormon. She lost her hearing when she was 3 years old. So did her brother, a little bit younger, and became an orphan. At some point, their mom, my grandmother, died when right around the same age, 3 or 4. So and I can't remember if it's the Lion House or the Beehive House, but she lived there for a little while. Um, it was a boarding house for the deaf students, the female deaf students. It's a long time ago. You can do the research. So just an interesting thing, because that is the heart of Mormonville, right there. A little piece of Mormon history that it's either the Lion House or the Beehive House. Sorry, I can't remember. I'd have to ask my sisters and see if they remember. That my aunt remembers. Anyway, part of the reason why I'm doing this video is my mom and dad have both passed away. I think that if they saw me doing this video at this point and they're still living, they would be horrified. Sorry, this is my story, and I'm telling it. My parents were a little crazy as far as like fanatical Mormons, and they were fanatical Mormons, pretty hardcore. Now, if you're a member of the church, you know, if you're especially in Utah, this is more Utah Mormons, because they are different. And growing up in Utah, you knew there were like California Mormons, there were Utah Mormons. They usually compared them to California Mormons. But California Mormons were very different than Utah Mormons. Utah Mormons just had a different experience. California Mormons are more mellow about all that stuff. Utah Mormons, oh no, you're a stickler for all of those rules. Anyway, I wasn't going to get into all this, but hey, it came up. Anyway, so as far as my past and why I left the Mormon Church, when I was around 5 or 6, I remember looking at my mom and dad going, something's wrong. Something is wrong, because we were so steeped in the Mormon Church and that religion that it seemed like it was the only important thing. And that's normal for Mormonism. It is like the most important thing. Everything else comes under that. So, and I remember my parents being so earnest and trying so hard. And I remember thinking, something's wrong. Something is not right here. I saw two people struggling and trying really hard, but I didn't see love or joy or happiness. I mean, there were a few moments of that, but it was mostly just struggle and pretending that we're all going to be okay. And now I want to say that in my family, I did have 3 siblings who had cystic fibrosis who have passed away, and it's been a long time since that's happened. So when I was young, we were dealing with that. So there was a lot of kind of heartbreak and sorrow and grief and all of these things too that came along with me growing up. So there was a lot of really intense emotions in that house. But still the biggest thing, Mormon Church on the top of the list, the most important thing. Now, I've had a lot of mystical experiences growing up, and it started, well, I always saw things in the dark. I'm going to start with that. I saw things in the dark all the time. I shared a room with my sister Charlene, a bedroom, and I would make her go to the bathroom with me in the middle of the night because I was terrified. Like, she's my little sister. I was older. I saw so many things, it was crazy. I mean, like ghosts in the closet, things like that. I'd make her get up and close the closet doors in the middle of the night because I was seeing things in there. I think I drove her nuts. Thank you, Charlene, for helping me out. Anyway, so I saw things. I saw things all the time. And so I was afraid a lot. And I would leave my body. I would astral project. It started at a young age. I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't have a name for it, but I was astral projecting, and it was really painful to come back into my body. I also knew I couldn't tell anyone because I don't even think I would have the words to express what was happening to me. I just knew I was leaving my body. When I came back into my body, it was really painful. I didn't like it. I don't think I liked being here on earth, actually, if you want to know the truth. It was really painful and hard. But when I was out, I do remember, at first, for a long time, I was saying I don't remember anything, but then it's like, no, I do remember stuff. I remember being some guy who was a fisherman, who was a guide. I think he was some sort of guide. You know, he looked like a fisherman. He He was an older man with glasses, you know, gray hair, walking. He had a fishing pole, and he would take me places. He was nice. He was kind, supportive. He'd have his hand on my back here, showing me stuff, taking me places. And then also at some point, I remember being in a place that was so absolutely stunningly beautiful that it looked like the most amazing animation that you've ever seen in your life. Just like all these stunning colors. And as you would think, um, like your thoughts would create this, project out into this reality and change and shift and move. Just, I remember beautiful fuchsias and pinks and oranges and yellows and just gorgeous. I remember seeing people that to me at that time looked like princesses, like fairy princesses or something like that. Just stunning. Um, of course, I couldn't tell anyone. And again, it was really hard to come back into my body. It was almost as if something was out of sync and I wasn't fully back in, and I was trying to come back in, and everything would vibrate and hum, and I would come back in and land. Like the more I moved, the more painful it was. Um, and I could hear and feel everything. I think it's some sort of synesthesia, if you know what that is. Like all the feelings kind of get mixed up and fused, and at some point I'd have to get up and run to and move my body as quickly as possible so that my body and my spirit would come back into alignment in my body. Very strange. I've never really been able to get an explanation for what that was. Anyway, and then also when I was about 10 years old, I started having past life memories. And this would come in dream form, but I would wake up and I would be somewhere else. So, but I was still, I knew I was me, Lorina, here in my body, but I was somewhere else and I was somebody else from in the past. I would see myself as a Native American woman with long dark hair, braids, buckskin, lighter color buckskin clothing, and nothing extraordinary happened. I was just doing my thing, like on the path, doing the things that I did during the day, because that's what I was supposed to do. That was my job. So I would experience that, and that happened several times, and I knew it was me. I never saw anything bad happen. I just knew that, hey, that's me. I knew that I could not tell anyone. I did not know that it was reincarnation, that I was seeing myself in a past life. I just knew that's me. Simple perception. Oh, that's me. And I was an adult woman, very different than me, Lorina, 10-year-old Lorina, having this experience. And again, I knew I couldn't tell anyone, and I probably wouldn't know how to explain it either. And if I did tell someone, I knew it'd just be bad. I didn't know what they would do, parents, bishop, whatever. I just knew I couldn't tell. But I didn't know where to fit this into the construct of what I was being taught what reality is. So that was, so what do you do with that? And then being an 8-year-old, back to, okay, 8-year-olds, when you get baptized in the Mormon Church. So this is a huge deal. You start probably around 7.5 or maybe even 7. They start telling, oh, next year you're going to get baptized, and your dad, of course, is going to be the one who baptizes you. And it's a really big deal. You're going to get baptized, and then the next day on Sunday you're going to get confirmed. And so this is something about, you are washed of all your sins when you're baptized. And then after, so any sins between 0 to 8, between 0 and being baptized, you're good. You've been forgiven. But after that, oh no, you have free agency. You make all of your choices, and they do call it in the Mormon Church your free agency, which is kind of like your free will. You choose your actions, and you are completely responsible for everything after that. Heavy responsibility for an 8-year-old. Anyway, and they tell you, of course, because this is about free agency and having free will, that you have a choice. Do you think that you really have a choice? You're 8 years old. Everybody in your society, your church, your family is telling you that you have a choice, but you know that you do not have a choice. You know what that's called? Gaslighting. Anyway, so you do it because you have no choice, even though they tell you you have a choice. So anyway, I got baptized. I was terrified. You get to go have ice cream afterwards. That's exciting. That's one little reward for getting baptized. Um, anyway, so I did get baptized. The biggest thing is growing up Mormon. Uh, the thing about sex, we just big jump into sex, and confusion around sex and having sex and not having sex, and even showing off your body, and um, because your body is a temple, which that makes sense. Your body is a temple. That's a beautiful thing. It's sacred. Take care of it. That's a good thing. But in the Mormon Church, the thing about sex and sexuality and showing off your body, I remember at a really young age being really, really confused about trying to understand the preciousness of your body and that your body is a temple, but also wondering, but why am I supposed to cover it up and hide it and just clamp down on this? And I remember being really young and thinking, and as you're a young adolescent and that budding sexuality that is starting to kind of come up out of you, I remember thinking, oh no, you got to hide that. You got to shut that down. You cannot be sexual. You cannot feel sexual. And that is an impossibility to try and shut down. That it is natural. But I remember even being younger before I felt that, trying to figure it out because it just didn't make sense to me why we hide so much, and especially females. Yeah. Anyway, I got those messages really early. Anyway, so, and this is okay. And go even into like some kind of traumatic stuff. When I was 15, my dad wouldn't even let me date. I had guys knocking at the door who wanted to hang out with me. He was the guard at the door. He would not let us, like anybody. Nobody's going on. Nobody's dating. Of course, I wanted to, but I'm like standing behind him, going, "No, well, okay, I don't get to go have fun." Anyway, so when I was 15, you know, um, I'm going to make a really long story super short. I was raped. I was a virgin. I had hardly even kissed guys at this point. Um, and the thing is, I did get pregnant from that one sexual encounter. Now, you have to know in the Mormon Church, the thing is about sex is that premarital sex and the whole thought behind premarital sex, and you can do research on this, that many of the church presidents, that they're called the prophet of the church, say that, and really literally, they say that one of the worst things that can happen to you is that you are soiled, and that means loss of your purity. It's a purity culture. Here we go. Might hear it a lot these days around Mormon and cult stuff. Yeah, you're not pure anymore. Some of them have even said you might as well just be dead. But they see it as a standard of this is murder. Oh, and look, here is like, oh, having sex before marriage. It's it's almost just as bad. So where do you go after that? And I'm serious. I'm not exaggerating. This is not an exaggeration. It's that bad. So where do you go after that? Anyway, long story short, my dad tried to make me, I knew the guy who raped me. My dad tried to make me marry the guy who raped me. I didn't have a lot of strength and power at that time. I told him he was absolutely insane and that I wasn't going to do it because that is insane. If you think about it, that is completely insane. It makes no sense. Why would you want your daughter to marry a guy who is a rapist? No. Anyway, yeah. So they sent me away. The Mormon Church, they called the bishop. I had to talk, it's a long story. But they sent me away to live with this family. They made me give my child up for adoption. It was the most traumatic experience that I've ever been through in my entire life, is being forced to go live with his family. That wasn't so bad. I was their babysitter. Yeah, here, you're pregnant. You can't keep your baby, but here, take care of our kids. Anyway, and they made me hide. Um, it was a really horrible experience. The hardest thing I've ever been through was signing those adoption papers and walking away. My parents said absolutely not, that they would not help me. Um, if I decided to keep the child again, did I have a choice? No. I was 15. I'd been raped. I had absolutely no support. I was being forced to do all these things. Um, yeah. Anyway, the most painful experience of my life was walking away from that child. I wanted to die. I went back home to live with my parents, and I literally mean I wanted to die. It split my soul apart. There was a lot of damage there, and I really truly mean a lot of damage. So I went back home to live with my parents, pretended like nothing happened ever, which is, let's just go back to normal. And hey, I wanted to be normal again, but that just, no, as much as I wanted to be normal again, there was no normal. It was just trying to heal. Even though at that point, I didn't know I was trying to heal. I just wanted to feel normal again, get my life back. Um, uh, After that, I became kind of a zombie. I was so traumatized. I was like a zombie. And so for about a year, I was a zombie, where somebody told me to do something, I went and did it. That's just without thinking, just mechanical actions. And at some point, we became really, really rebellious. Me and my two sisters, who are just younger than me. Um, okay, this is my parents, because we became really angry. I didn't want to go to church. I hated church. I hated the Mormon Church. I was really angry with the Mormon Church. My parents, okay, this is kind of strange, but I've heard of this before. In the Mormon Church, my parents, for 2 summers in a row. Now, summers were the difficult time period. Like during the winter, fall, spring, we were still in school, so easier to control. We went to school, did our thing. But during the summers, we were a little more wild. Me and my sisters didn't want to go to church. In fact, we refused to go to church. We hated it. My parents, for 2 summers in a row, um, decided to not feed us at all. So they took all of the food. This is very Mormon. We didn't go to church. So they would do anything that they could to force us to go to church. So they used food. They said, if you don't go to church, we're not going to feed you. That's it. It's that simple. Well, of course, we said, fuck you. I'm not going to church. Anyway, so they took all the food that was in the cupboard. They locked it in their bedroom. They stopped buying foods. There was no food in the fridge or the freezer. They took my littlest sister, Jana, um, out to eat sometimes, and they'd come home and eat it in front of us. They would feed her. Well, because she had cystic fibrosis, they had to feed her. But they didn't feed me or my two sisters 2 summers in a row. And so I had a part-time job at that time, so I had some money. Okay, because what we did, we would hitchhike up to State Street, go get food at taco time, hang out there for a little while, and then come back home. That's what we did, which is, hitchhiking. That's not very smart and incredibly dangerous, but anyway, we're just like, we're getting out of here. This is awful. And we don't have any food. Nobody's giving us food. So, and which is actually illegal and abusive. And you could, these days, oh man, people would call the cops or what was it, Child Protective Services. Anyway, yeah. And at some point, one of those summers, I think it was the second summer in a row that my dad and mom decided to do that. They went and got my grandparents from Oregon and brought them back to Utah, Murray, Utah. And they stayed with us for, I don't know, a month or so. And so everything went back to normal, whatever normal is, our weird normal. So we got fed. Nobody said anything about what was going on. That actually, while they were gone, they were trying to starve us. And I told my grandpa, so this is my dad's father. I told him what was going on and um, that they were not feeding us because we didn't go to church. And my grandpa said, "Well, you must have deserved it, and you must have been really, really bad." And I was absolutely shocked that he thought that was okay. Now, I don't know if he thought, well, how could my son do that? Or if he just thought, well, he's the dad, he's making the right decision. So, anyway, yeah. And my thought was, and everybody loved my grandpa. My grandma was crazy. They loved my grandpa. And I said, okay. In my head, I just thought, well, you're an asshole too. And that's the last time I ever tell you anything. Now, my grandpa was in a wheelchair. He was arthritic and had been in a wheelchair for, at that point, probably 20 years of his life. So he needed a lot of care. Anyway, so that was uh, just some of his story. But that is what is that about? I don't even know what to say. I'm lost for words because that doesn't make any sense again. Well, so the most important thing always was go to church. Now, the thing is about my parents, I always thought, being older at some point, a lot older, I thought, wow, well, at least, my parents made it really miserable. They didn't make going to church fun. They didn't make growing up fun. I mean, and there was some really bad circumstances going on that made life really intense and painful. Yeah, that was, a big part of everything. But they really didn't know how to bring joy and very much love into it. The only time you really felt love was when something really tragic was happening, like my brother Marlon died, or somebody was really, really sick in the hospital. That's when you felt some love. So there was always some sense of love when some tragedy was happening, but it was always associated with pain, and it wasn't like the good stuff, you know. So anyway, so at some point in my life, when I got older, I thought, they made it easy to leave the church. My parents made it really, really easy to leave the church. Now, I do have to say, at some point in that time period, I think my last like 6 months in high school as a senior, the Mormon Church, the bishopric, asked me to become, um, what is it, the lead position of the girls in the, I don't know what they called them, the Mary Maids or something. It's the young miss like thing where they get together. It was on Tuesday nights. We'd hang out and have meetings. And anyway, we had a lot of parties. I helped plan the parties. That was fun. I don't know why they asked me, but I guess, get them back into the fold might help them be good. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, so my mom was deaf. So my parents went to the deaf ward. The kids all went to the hearing ward. So we actually went to different churches, which is kind of unusual too. And by the way, the deaf Mormon church was downtown Salt Lake City. We liked going there. That was fun. Um, we enjoyed the deaf people. My parents didn't teach us sign language, which again is kind of crazy and doesn't even make sense. That the language that your mother speaks, you don't even learn. My parents didn't teach it to us. They didn't speak. I mean, if you had a kid and you were deaf, would you teach it sign language? Oh, there's a really good chance you would. But my parents, I don't know. My mother didn't have enough strength to say, no, I'm going to teach this to my children. I'm going to speak to them just naturally as you would just speak to them in sign language. That didn't happen. So we didn't learn sign language. But we did love going to the deaf church. The deaf church was fun. It was exciting. There was a lot of, if you're around deaf people much, there's a lot of animation because deaf people speak, they use their hands, they kind of make funny noises when they speak. That was fun. There was a lot of energy there, which was not at the regular Mormon church. So we did enjoy going to the Mormon church, the deaf Mormon church, even though I couldn't really understand anyone. So, yeah, weird. So as I got older, so I don't know how long that position lasted when I was a senior in high school, but when I got out of high school, I was completely lost and didn't know what to do with myself. I had a nervous breakdown around 19 or 20, and I mean a complete breakdown because none of the stuff that had happened to me had ever been dealt with at all. Um, uh, and I never did get therapy. And at some point, my brother did ask, he was having a nervous breakdown himself at some point, and he was in the hospital. He was really sick. Um, the psychiatrist at the hospital said that we should have a family meeting with the Marlins, doctors, and a psychiatrist. And so we went to this hospital in this big conference room with the doctors, and one of them was a psychiatrist. And us girls thought, oh my God, we get to talk to somebody. We get to talk about what's really going on here and how awful this is, and maybe somebody will hear us. No. So we got in this meeting, and Marlon wasn't there because he just, they didn't recommend that, but they had the rest of the family there. So what I remember is that as we're having this meeting and talking, the doctors are talking, the psychiatrist is talking. My dad he does this really uncomfortable thing, and he's got his arms crossed and his legs crossed, and he just said, no, no. The Lord is going to help us through this, and we're going to pray, and that is the help we need. That God is going to give us the help that we need, and that's it. And he shut it down, shut it down, shut it down. So no actual mental, emotional help. They didn't believe in that. And, we probably all could have used it. In fact, I'm sure of it. But no, shut it down. Oh, no, the church, God, that's going to help us, and that's it. So, we might have gotten a little bit of help at some point, but no. Anyway, so back to so I had a lot of emotional issues. Really, I was a mess. I was around 19 years old, and I just did the best I could. And I literally had a breakdown. I talk about it in one of my videos. It's called My Mormon Story. If you want to listen to it, I'll put a link in this video. It gets more into this story, but I don't need to tell it again. But I just struggled as best as I could to get through it. And at some point, I had a job. I finally, around 21, I was dating a lot. I did actually at 21, and I was going to bars and stuff, but I was still a Mormon. I think at that point you would call me a Jack Mormon. I was a Jack Mormon. I don't know if people are familiar with that term. I didn't really believe in it, but I was still considered a Mormon. At some point when I was 21 years old, because I was dating this guy named Larry. I was going to bars. I was, discos. it was the disco era. I spent the night one night at his house, so I was definitely not being a good Mormon. I spent the night at his house, and I did see a being show up in front of me. And I mean, when I say a being, I mean a full-on. There is a being standing in front of me. He's about, I don't know, 6 feet tall or so, full-on, light, made of light, white beard, white hair, long blue eyes. I mean, I could see it so clearly that I saw the woven light of his robe. I mean, I saw the pieces of light that created the fabric that was his robe. It was that clear and precise. And so I just stared at him. I didn't think much of it. I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm seeing something. And I stared and stared and just taking it in. And then I went, okay, I'm going to lay back down. And I laid down, and boom, he was gone, because that's when my thinking brain turned on and went, oh my God, what did I just see? I sat up, he was gone. Anyway, that was kind of the first time I'd seen this kind of thing. And I've also, I've seen, and if you watch some of my videos, I've seen levels open up, people walk out. That's happened more than once. Beings walk out. I've seen angelic beings. I've had all sorts of mystical experiences. None of these experiences fit into the Mormon Church. Now, the Mormon Church, of course, Joseph Smith had visions. He saw, I think it was Jesus and God, if I remember correctly. That was a long time ago. who started telling him where to go find the golden plates. And then the angel Moroni shows up. And so he saw beings. Well, I've seen a lot of beings. I haven't tried to create my own religion. That's It's a really good thing. Anyway, so at some point, it happened in pieces where I just got further and further away from the church. And at some point, when I started doing hair, and through this, I've had many mystical experiences. I'm not giving them all because that's a book. This is a short, not too long of a video. But I started reading books like I started doing hair, and somebody who worked there was a New York hairdresser. And he said, "Oh, you should read this book," because I was definitely interested in, like, I had been reading tarot cards. I was highly psychic. I'd had a lot of incredibly psychic experiences, like going to a party and looking at someone's hands, getting visions of their life, this type of thing that, what do you do with that? He said, read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. So I started reading a lot of books that really changed my worldview about this larger picture of mysticism and spiritual experiences that are outside of the Mormon Church. I started reading, I think when I was about 18, I started reading a lot of books on past lives, past life regression, past lives. But, back then, the New Age shelf was like, in a bookstore, was very small. It's different now. So I started studying all of this stuff. And so it really happened pieces at a time where I really started expanding my spiritual view of life. And I do not consider myself to be a Mormon at all in any way. In fact, I kind of look at it as, yeah, it's a cult. In fact, if you drink coffee when we were young, like if you drink coffee, somebody's walking by. So if you drink coffee, you're being bad. In fact, just drinking coffee, and I mean this, just drinking coffee can get in the way of your immortal soul. Hey, chill, baby. Oh, a whole bunch of people are walking by. Peanut, hey. Oh, anyway. What was I saying? Oh, because if you drink coffee, that is really bad. Not just sort of bad, it's really bad. The level of importance of just drinking coffee and you not getting to the temple to go through the temple ceremony to get sealed for time and all eternity to your mate, your future wife or husband, and then being able to have your children sealed. Well, none of those things can happen if you just drink coffee. It's that bad. So what you're doing is you're creating, you're stopping being able to have that connection to your relatives that you bring into life or have brought you into life. You will not be able to be with them in heaven for time and all eternity because you drink coffee. It has that level of importance. So it's easy to be bad growing up Mormon. In fact, when we were teenagers, you know what we did? We go to nearby, teenagers, yeah. We go to like JB's Big Boys or Denny's or like sit and drink coffee for hours and eat French fries. And that's being bad. And we love doing it. And I still love coffee to this day. Anyway. And just one last thing, officially, the Mormons, I am still officially a Mormon. Now, the only reason why I am still officially a Mormon is because I didn't want to do that to my parents because I knew how incredibly painful it would be for them if I took my membership off the records. At this point, they died about 5 years ago, so now I can do it. But it doesn't feel that important to me. I just want to say, so they still think, Mormon Church considers me a Mormon. They do not call me. They do not bother me. They do not show up at my door. They used to, because my dad always made sure that they had my address. So they would get a hold of me. They found me in New York City. I had the missionaries visit me in New York City a couple times, which I found highly entertaining, by the way. Anyway, because I knew nothing's going to happen. And also that my parents continually tried to get us to come back to church. They knew me and my two sisters did not go to church at all, but we still all have our names on the record books. But they don't consider themselves Mormons. It just didn't seem that important to take it off. But maybe I will now. Anyway, that's it. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this story. If you have any comments or anything to share about being Mormon, being non-Mormon, anything you want to know about any of these things, please leave comments. Also, please like, share, and subscribe. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. Take good care of yourself. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.